Sports talk where your voice counts. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Steve Jones Show. Great to have you with us today. Here on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Today's show brought to you by our good friends at Sunbury Motors. 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors, Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Basketball tonight. Another big game for the Nittany Lion basketball team. You know, this is what you've been hoping for with any program. I don't care if we're talking about Bucknell basketball, Penn State football, Penn State basketball, wrestling, whatever. You want to get to late in the season and then realize that the games that you are watching, the games you are observing, the games you're announcing happen to be significant. Well, that's what's happened with Penn State basketball. In the 17-18 season, these games down the stretch have been significant because they put themselves in a position to make them significant. They've got Michigan tonight. Very, very good Michigan basketball team. John Beilein's a really good coach. He's done a great job of molding this team. He had Mo Wagner coming back. He was going to build around him. He already knew he had a transfer in Charles Matthews out of Kentucky, who stepped up and played very well. He knew he had a point guard in Xavier Simpson. But then he's been able to add in like Jordan Poole, Livers, 2 freshmen that have stepped up. He had Duncan Robinson. So he had some known entities. And, of course, Rockman, who has put together really an outstanding senior season. I've been impressed by how Rockman has played this year. He's always been a good player. He's never been a great player. I mean, anybody wants to say, oh, he's had a great, great career. Well, he's had a good career at Michigan. Had a good career. He's not one of the best players ever, but he's had a really good senior season. Really good. Not only that, I'm not just talking offensively. I mean, Rockman's had a really good season at both ends of the floor. He's played really, really well defensively. Michigan is not a high turnover team, 9 per game. Michigan's not a high steals or block team, but they don't foul either. They only average 15 fouls per game. So they don't put you on the line a lot, and they don't usually get to the line. Or in part of it, too, is that they do get to the line, but they don't hit as many. They're only a 64% free throw shooting team. They only get 14% of their points at the free throw line. So that'll be tonight. It's a big game for Penn State, big game for Michigan. Michigan, I think everyone knows that they're safely in the NCAA tournament, regardless of what they do down the stretch they're in. Penn State needs to keep winning to put themselves in the conversation. That means tonight, senior night for Julian Moore, senior night for Shep Garner at the Jordan Center beginning at 7 o'clock. We're on the air beginning at 6:30. Rob Biertemple is going to join us in a few moments. We'll talk about some baseball, Neil Coulong, some football in the next half hour, and then we're going to open up and kick it into another gear. Dana O'Neill joins us to talk basketball tomorrow as we continue on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
When it comes to car buying, there's the other guy's way, and then there's the SMC way. The other guys force you into a vehicle you really don't want. The Sunbury Motors way lets you take the time you need to browse, ask questions, and take the test drive and think on it. For over 100 years, the Mertz family and all their employees have made your experience the most pleasant one you'll ever have. The other guys won't offer you the best price for your trade, no matter how much they say they will. The SMC way is their promise to provide you with the most money the market shows your vehicle is worth. The SMC way is to offer you all applicable factory rebates on new vehicles and generous discounts. Looking for a pre-owned vehicle? The SMC way checks each vehicle in a 200-mile radius to determine the lowest price, then beat it. It's the lowest price promise, just part of the SMC way. The choice is up to you, the other guy's way or the SMC way. The SMC way wins every time. Sunbury Motors Company in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury, and at sunburymotors.com. Selling more cars and satisfying more customers for over 100 years.
Welcome back. Great to have you with us. Penn State basketball tonight. The Nittany Lions at Michigan in the Jordan Center at 7 o'clock this evening. We'll be on beginning at 6:30. Big game for both teams on senior night at the BJC. It's just fun at this time of the year to have games with stakes where you're not playing out the string. They put themselves in that position. The Pirates have had an interesting camp. A veteran in David Freeze Blunt. It's always fun for me to talk with Rob Biertemple from The Athletic. Rob, welcome. It's great to hear from you again, my friend.
Steve, you're hanging out with like one of the hottest college basketball teams in the country right now, and you want to talk to me about baseball?
I know. I know, but it's always fun to talk with you anyway, Rob. So I'll talk with you anytime about anything.
Well, it's good to hear from you. How you doing?
I'm doing well, and you're right. They've been a hot team to watch. They've played very, very well. They're at a point now, Rob, where they can. I walk into the arena, I feel like they can beat anybody.
Very good. That's quite a time to be a Penn State fan of any sport, man. Between that wrestling team and football team did pretty well. So let's keep it rolling.
Not bad at all. Now the Pirates. David Freese has a World Series ring, and he's performed well on the biggest stage. How interesting was his blunt conversation with the media about the status of the Pirates?
Yeah, it was a little. I don't want to say it was entirely unexpected, because I got some vibe from him last year that he was not happy with the way things were going in that clubhouse and with the performance on the field. But to have him walk in, first day here in camp and sort of drop the truth bomb that, there's a need for an attitude adjustment, I think. Some guys, after 13, 14, and 15, maybe a little bit of taking it for granted, maybe a little bit of just cruising at times and forgetting, what it's like to kind of be hungry and have to fight and scratch for stuff. I think he was, he wasn't here for those playoff teams in Pittsburgh. He competed against one of them when he was with the Cardinals in 13. And, so he got a sense of what it was like here for the guys who were in the club. And, he said it starts, he didn't rule himself out. He says he has to do a better job, but he pointed to every guy in that clubhouse. He pointed to the people in the front office. He pointed to ownership. And, I think it was a message that needed to be sent. And he's a guy who, like you say, has been there. He's a World Series MVP. He's hit some big, made some big plays in big games. And he's a veteran guy on this team now, even though he's only been here a couple of years. There's not many veteran guys left, it seems. That's how it works with the Pirates. So I wasn't entirely shocked that he opened his mouth and talked rather bluntly and freely for about 20 minutes.
While you talk about it's words that a lot of people felt that needed to be said, that doesn't necessarily mean that management wants it to be said. Has there been any reaction internally from the Pirates about that?
Yeah, I'm sure that both he and Josh Harrison, who as you know issued the trade me demand and via the Athletic back in January when the cleaning house portion began with McCutchen and Garrett Cole being traded. I'm sure both of those guys have gotten some pushback from the front office. Yesterday when we talked to Neil Huntington, the general manager, and also Glenn Hurdle, the manager of the team, they both tried to put a smiley face on it, saying that, we're willing to listen and we may not agree with everything they say, but we're willing to have open lines of communication and blah, blah, blah. But I think the bottom line is, and the message they delivered is that, we're the ones running this team. We have a business model that we're going to follow. And, you may disagree with that, guys, but this is how it's going to be run. At the end of the day, they're the guys making the moves, spending the money. So you really can't do much if you're a player except, sit back and deal with it.
Yet that business model did bring with it, I believe, a $50 million windfall, didn't it?
Well, it depends. The team is, it seems pretty clear that the club is making money, and it's just how much is up for debate. I mean, this year every major league team had a check for $50 million, part of the distribution of money from the sale of MLB Advanced Media, the internet side of MLB, which was sold to Disney, in which Disney has a few dollars in its bank account. Mm-hmm. So every club got that $50 million. The Pirates still get a check every year for revenue sharing. So you figure between that 50 and whatever it is they get in revenue sharing, I'm hearing anywhere from 20 to 35 or $40 million. That pretty much covers their entire payroll before they sell a ticket, before they sell a T-shirt or a hot dog or park a car down at the North Shore. Their payroll is pretty much covered. And then you throw in the money they get from TV, radio, advertising. It's booming in baseball. It's a $10 billion business right now, and it's only going to keep going up. And if you're a guy that owns your team, you're like Mr. Nunny here in Pittsburgh, you're in good shape.
Is there any other franchise in the majors that has a similar business model to the Pirates based on what you know?
Well, you can look at the way some, like the Marlins to a degree, although they're not as heavily invested in player development as the Pirates have been. The Tampa Bay Rays, I think, are pretty comparable. For a few years there, the San Diego Padres were, but now they've kind of shifted. You saw the money they spent on Hosmer yesterday, so that maybe their paradigm is shifting a little bit. But the Pirates, they approach it as here's your budget, and spend that however you want on player acquisition. But that's your budget for the year, and it's not going to be as big as some other teams. The Pirates are never going to have a payroll that's in the upper half of baseball, at least not as long as this current ownership group is in place. But they intend to, develop as many players as they can from guys they draft and bring them up. And you complement that with guys you acquire via trades or free agency. It's never going to be like a superstar kind of guy, but you look for complementary pieces that can fill in there. And that's, a solid, it's put the team back on pretty solid financial footing. When Nutty took over as principal owner about a decade ago, there was some concern about the debt-to-equity ratio for this club, which is, the reason Aramis Ramirez had to be traded to the Cubs out of the blue, a few years back. And now there's a plan, at least. It may not be what everyone is hoping for, especially if you like big, flashy rosters and teams that hit a lot of home runs and win a lot of games. But there's a plan there, and the Pirates are stable, and they're turning a small profit, and they're not making waves in MLB. You don't see a lot of troublemakers, or the ownership doesn't go against, things MLB's commissioner's office is trying to do. So it's exactly what the people in New York would like to see. And, you can argue, if you're a fan, is it better to have a team that really wants to go all out, pedal to the metal every year to win, or is it better to have a team that just is kind of like an accountant's dream,
right?
A little boring and a little stable.
Rob, what about now? One thing about acquiring prospects is that it's a guessing game. Sometimes they pan out and it's great, and other times they don't. I've sensed the Pirates were pretty happy with the return that they got for Garrett Cole and for Andrew McCutchen, just based on their scouting. What kind of return did they get, or is it just going to have to be a wait-and-see thing for the next couple of years?
Yeah, for the most part, it is going to be a heavily kind of wait-and-see kind of thing. You look at, I think at least especially in the short term, the biggest name could be Joe Musgrove, who just never was able to make his way into the starting rotation with the Astros, and was more of a long reliever, and that was kind of where he was ticketed with them in the near, in the future, or maybe even the rest of his career if he would have stayed with Houston. And now here he gets a chance. They're going to give him every opportunity to become a starting pitcher and win a rotation spot. Colin Moran, a guy who was kind of a backup infielder kind of piece, is now also he's going to be the starting opening day third baseman, and they're going to try to give him every chance to hang on to that job and keep it. Those two pieces, I think, are the biggest, maybe the most immediate impact kind of thing. But they got a couple of guys, a couple of minor league outfielders, Martin and Reynolds, who could pan out. Some scouts have told me they could be, fourth outfielder types potentially. But it's so hard to predict at this level that, it wouldn't necessarily be a surprise if they bloom into something a little bit bigger than that. But you're right, it is such a guessing game, which is why when you're dealing with prospects, it's usually better to get a bunch and have one or two bloom on you than just bank everything on one or two.
New pace of play rules, 6 mound visits. That has now come out. They negotiated between the Players Association and obviously the commissioner's office. They're also cutting down 20 seconds per commercial break, which should cut 6 minutes off the games themselves, including a countdown clock in the ballpark.
Yeah.
What did you think about the mound visits? Now, certain visits, for example, there's an injury or if it's raining and an infielder needs a tongue depressor or whatever, that doesn't count. But what did you think about the rule?
I'm not a big fan of these kinds of tweaks. I mean, I'm sure MLB has a purpose behind, it's very focused right now on pace of game, shortening the times of games. And I've heard a lot of different theories about it. One of them I thought was pretty interesting is, you go to a big league game these days, most people at any given moment are probably not watching the game. They're watching their phones, they're talking to their buddies, they're in line for a beer or whatever. And the ball game is kind of a nice thing to have on in the background of wherever you are. And that's kind of always been the nature of baseball. But if it goes too long, people can get on board with it. They wander, or the attention really wanders, or they do something else. So I think, in a way, putting so much attention on when it comes down to trimming 3 or 4 or 5 minutes off a already 3-hour product, I don't know. I mean, I think the changes they're putting in now, the 6 visits, that seems pretty harmless because I don't know if many managers make more than 6 visits in a game when they're, not changing pitchers anyway.
But that includes the catcher, though.
True. And I think that's what you'll probably see more of is if teams now will start to use all 6 because you have 6.
Right.
Before,
that's very true.
Yeah, so before it might have been, maybe you just need to make 1 or 2 visits a game. Now it's the 9th inning, and you're up a couple runs. Well, let's give this guy a minute or 2 to gather himself. Let's take a couple visits.
Yeah.
So now before maybe we're out of the inning in 5 minutes, now we're out of the inning in 7 minutes. And baseball shot itself in the foot there. So I just hate these kind of artificial constraints. I'm very much, I guess, old school with it. Just let the game play out the way it's going to play out. And some days it's going to be done in an hour and 58 minutes, and some days it's going to be done in 4 hours and 58 minutes. I've been at both kinds of games, and that's just the way they are.
Well, to me, this isn't a slight overreaction to soccer. Soccer's over in less than 2 hours. I mean, and that's where the millennials have been flocking, MLS. I think some of this is an overreaction to soccer.
Yeah, I mean, that's I became a Premier League fan a couple of years ago because I needed something to watch. And that's one of the beauties of it is you're right. You turn the game on at 10 o'clock in the morning, and if you have plans for lunch at 12:05, you can make it there. They're going to be done playing.
Who's your team?
So I'm an Everton man myself.
Ah, okay.
It's been a rough year. Been a rough probably few years. But now that Lukaku was gone, it's really rough. So,
yeah.
But please don't tell me you're a Liverpool guy.
Actually, I'm not any guy, but Jeff Tarman, who's our producer on the radio network for football and basketball, is a huge Liverpool guy. Dave Baker is a huge Arsenal guy.
Well, tell Tarman I would rather walk alone. He'll know what I mean.
Yeah, oh no, believe me, he tells Dick Girardi and me that all the time. And we don't think it's just a Liverpool thing. I think whether he's around us, he would rather walk alone.
Outstanding.
Rob, thanks so much. It's always a pleasure. It's great to hear you always do such great work, and great to see you at a quality group like The Athletic.
Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate it, man. Anytime. Just give me a buzz. I'd like to chat some ball. Always have fun.
Rob Biertempo from The Athletic joining us from Florida. Coming up in the next half hour, we will talk with Neil Coulong. Don't forget Penn State basketball tonight. Michigan in the Jordan Center at 7. Ron beginning at 6:30. Great to have you with us today. Brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors, Kia routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Sports talk where your voice counts. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Welcome back. Today's show brought to you by our good friends at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Coming up tomorrow, Dana O'Neill from The Athletic will join us. Talk about college basketball. We'll discuss what happened with the Louisville appeal and also take a look at what she thinks about Penn State, especially after tonight's game with Michigan at the Jordan Center, which will be a 7 o'clock tip-off and a 6:30 airtime as the Nittany Lions take on Michigan tonight. Just a few moments, we'll talk with Neil Coulong. And let's get to this day in sports history. In 1904, the National Ski Association was formed in Ishpeming, Michigan. 1931, the White Sox and the New York Giants became the first major league teams to play a night game. Obviously, it's spring training. Regular season game, of course, was that Phillies-Reds game in 1935 at Crosley Field. 1968, an agreement between the baseball players and club owners increased the minimum salary for major league players to $10,000 a year. That's now what they tip for the buffet after the game. 1970, Bobby Hull, yes, the Golden Jet from the Chicago Blackhawks, scored his 500th career point. 1973, the Blackhawks played in their 262nd game without being shut out. 1974, Tom Seaver signed a contract with the New York Mets worth $172,000 a year. 1985. We're back in this day in 1985. I want to remind everyone that the Detroit Pistons, who were getting to be really good at this time, were playing their games in the Pontiac Silverdome. They were not playing yet at the Palace of Auburn Hills. It's a good-sized arena, 23,000 seats. An attendance record was set on this date in the NBA. 44,970 watched the game between the Atlanta Hawks and the Detroit Pistons. It was in the Pontiac Silverdome. 1986, Raleigh Fingers refused to shave his mustache to comply with the policy of the Cincinnati Reds. 1986, Jimmy Connors was fined $20,000 and suspended from tennis for 10 weeks after he threw a fit while playing against Yvonne Lendl. 1996, the Philadelphia 76ers had their worst offensive performance in 40 years. They managed to score a whopping 57 points against the Miami Heat. And yes, a 48-minute game with professionals. And that's this day in sports history. Feel like in the last month we've been on the apology tour. Every time you turn around, there's an announcer apologizing. There's an athlete apologizing. There's a national anthem singer apologizing. Everybody's apologizing these days. You know, shouldn't have tweeted that out. I apologize. I shouldn't have said that on the air. I apologize. I shouldn't have said that at the press conference. I apologize. And then there's what Fergie did the other night, the NBA All-Star Game. I finally did hear the version of it because obviously I didn't see the All-Star Game. I was doing the Penn State Purdue basketball game, which was opposite the All-Star Game. So I never saw anything. Didn't even see the highlights. I still haven't seen the highlights to this day, but I did see and hear, in fact, I haven't seen it. I heard Fergie's version of the national anthem. It didn't go well. Happens. I mean, when Roseanne thinks she did a better version, that's really not a great comparison. But everybody's apologizing these days. At the Olympics, everybody's apologizing. Announcers are apologizing. Networks are apologizing. Yeah, we would have wanted to have shown you the winner of the women's giant slalom, but we're so smart, we missed it. Huh? By the way, Lindsey Vonn, of course, bronze medal last night in the downhill, which is probably her final Olympic event. I mean, Lindsey Vonn, I think, is 33 now, right? I mean, to think she'd be in Beijing at the age of 37, I mean, I wouldn't doubt she's in Beijing, but I wouldn't doubt she's in Beijing announcing. But she won a bronze last night in the downhill. Michaela Schifrin is going to try and get gold in the combined coming up. But everyone's apologizing these days, including Fergie with the national anthem. And with that, I would like to at least publicly on behalf of Neil Coulon, apologize for the last 12 segments we've done, because I'm sure somewhere in there we had to apologize for something. Neil, welcome. It's great to have you with us.
It's good to be here. I didn't need an apology for that song, but just, as long as she promises to never do it again, I'd be fine with that.
That's all
really
I care
more what I
about.
wanna hear.
Right, really. Let's try America the Beautiful next time, see how it goes. All right, we'll kind of break you back in, slowly but surely. Neil, Le'Veon Bell. He's still asking for Neil Coulon money.
You know, I've been wrong about this on pretty much every turn. I really didn't think that they'd want to get themselves in position to be able to do that. And to the extent that they've done now, I think they've opened up enough room to be able to tag him. And I think that's just more, let's lock him in place so he has to talk to us. I understand why they would be doing that. The amount of money that they did clear up, I don't think that was so much of an issue. I mean, considering these are core players that they got restructured, you know, guys like David DeCastro, he's not going anywhere for a while. So it makes sense to, you know, kind of give him a little bit of a reward, give him some upfront money, clear out some cap space. But really, I mean, the Bell's bottom line has to be that $14.5 million tag level for the first year of his contract. So you're talking about easily the highest paid running back in the history of the NFL. And this is a league now where Alvin Kamara is available in the third round. We're seeing that over and over. It's risky. I mean, you know, you're getting certainly one of the best offensive players in the game, but that's a huge amount of money for a team that really needs defensive help. Even if Ryan Shazier was there, they need defensive help. They're putting a lot into it. Clearly, they want to make a deal. I see the value from that end, but it's going to hurt their cap bottom line long term, I think.
Well, it's rare that a running back does that, because usually what's ruining caps these days happen to be the quarterback money, and they already got Roethlisberger taken care of.
Yeah, this will largely be an unprecedented contract in many ways, and it's obviously I don't know the exact number that they're going to be talking about, but if it's going to be north of the 60 allegedly rejected last season, you're talking, you know, Antonio Brown level. You're going to carry Roethlisberger for 3 years. That's what he said that he wanted to play. How much longer he wanted to play with Antonio Brown as well, and Bell. I mean, that's, you know, with the offensive line that they're already spending. I mean, they're probably 70% of their cap is going to be tied into about 8 players. I'm not sure if that's common around the NFL, but you really have to hit a bunch of home runs in the draft if that's what you're going to do. You're going to have a lot of guys grossly outplaying the rookie contracts if you want to keep the group intact. And there's, you know, there's reason to think that maybe they should, but you haven't really seen them win a championship with these guys for the amount of time that they've been together. It's a strategic risk, and one that I'm not sure we've really seen or felt accustomed to seeing from the Steelers.
And Doug Martin was just given his release by the Tampa Bay Bucks. 6 years in the league. Much of a concern based on usage. I mean, because Bell has had a lot of touches the last couple of years. How much of a concern is that you give money into a guy that already has a lot of wear and tear on him? Because, by the way, at Michigan State, he got a lot of touches too.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it overall, and he's, you know, transformed his body twice. You know, how much more is it really going to take? I mean, the injuries that he's had, I think, they're more of the, you know, wear and tear variety, or even the sudden impact. Over time, though, he's going to slow down. That's just inevitable, and the style that he runs with requires him to be at an insanely quick level. I mean, the cutback that he has is you know, it's fully weaponized now. You have to count on him keeping himself in shape, which I think that they can do to a certain extent, and you really have to count on him keeping his legs healthy, and that really isn't always in the control of every single football player. It's tough. It's tough. I think Le'Veon Bell is a phenomenal player. If he plays his career in Pittsburgh, he'll rewrite every rushing record that they have, and this is a pretty storied franchise when it comes to running the football. So you can kind of see where they're coming from with it, but you can also see this blowing up pretty easily as well. I don't know. This is a tough one for me.
There's also Martavis Bryant. I mean, he'll be back. How much of a roll of the dice is it with this guy every year?
I think what they have right now with Bryant is somebody that kind of had a peak and valley season last year, kind of getting his legs back under him. some off-the-field drama that I don't think they really appreciated a whole lot. But toward the end, he was doing what he was supposed to be doing. You can kind of see him interacting with his teammates a little bit better than he was. And they've got him for another year on the cheap. I think that's really his highest and best use. I thought the level that Juju Smith-Schuster played at over the second half of the year really shows that Bryant's on his way out. They're not going to keep all three of those receivers, certainly when one of them is going to be cheap for a couple more years. Bryant will, I don't think they're going to trade him. I think they'll keep him in Pittsburgh, over this next season. He's going to be playing for a contract. So it'll certainly be up to him to kind of keep his nose clean and do what he needs to do. But he's got a lot of financial incentive to do exactly that, because if he's in Pittsburgh, he's probably going to be the third option in the passing game. He's going to have to make the most of his opportunities and show that he can be a good teammate if he wants to cash in free agency. I would assume that that's the path he's going to want to go down.
How interested are you in this Kirk Cousins situation?
From a financial perspective, I think it's interesting.
Yeah,
What we're seeing, and we saw this with Garoppolo's contract, just because of the salary cap. While I think owners sort of enjoyed the fact that there was a boon for a couple of years there of just mass amounts of cap room without them really having to increase spending a whole lot. Now, what we're seeing with the quarterbacks in particular is you can either give me the Joe Flacco contract, which guarantees that I own you for the next 10 years of my career,
right,
or we can just dumb this down very simply and say, give me my money guaranteed. This is what you're going to give me guaranteed anyway. We can control the cap a little bit better if my money is guaranteed and it's up front. Garoppolo, they put pretty much everything into the first season of his contract, which mitigates his cap over the next couple of years. That, to me, is a really smart move. And I think that's what a team that's going to want to sign Kirk Cousins, that's what they're going to be faced with. Cousins is going to say basically that. I've done what Garoppolo here has done in 6 games for the last 4 years. I'm worth this. This is what, very simply, this is the value of a franchise starting quarterback. And it's impossible to say that to whatever degree he doesn't qualify in that status. I mean, he's not Tom Brady, he's not Aaron Rodgers, but he's going to get paid. Somebody's going to pay him. There are way too many teams out there that have way too much salary cap space. If they're going to sell their fans and even the NFLPA that they're trying to win, they want to spend money, Cousins is going to get paid. So to me, you look at a team like the Vikings, they have the cap space set up simply because they're one of the rare teams that right now do not have a quarterback signed.
Right.
So they have the money to spend, and they have it really earmarked for that position. So if Cousins was to go to Minnesota and say, look, I can win you that NFC Championship game next year, I want $28 million, and I want $28 million a season. I want pretty much all of that to be guaranteed. And I think he's going to get somewhere in that ballpark. You're looking at a guy that probably could get 85 or 90 million, far and away set the record in the NFL, to a point where it's just like, why not just give him the whole contract guaranteed? Keep the cap to a level that we can continue to manage it, and we can pay other guys that want to come here or want to stay here. But lock the guy in place. We can give him just the guaranteed money without the trumped up back end year stuff that really gets you into salary cap trouble.
Would it shock you if Daniel Snyder tagged Kirk Cousins?
It would. It absolutely would. And he might even file a grievance if he was to do that.
I agree with you. They should file a grievance if he did.
I don't know why you'd even bother trading for Alex Smith if you just wanted to basically try to flip that, get your third-round pick back in a trade for Cousins to a point where he's not guaranteed to sign with anybody. His value goes through the floor. The second that he gets traded, all of that tag amount, which is, what was it, like $32 million or something like that?
Yeah.
All of that goes directly to the team's cap right away, and they have no assurances that he's going to sign a contract. He doesn't need to. Assuming that he wouldn't have signed the tag, which I'm sure he won't, he doesn't have any leverage. And that's just, it's bad business. It's even, I think that might even be beneath Dan Snyder. I guess I can't guarantee that, but that'd be a pretty bold move.
Jeez, I don't know. I mean, it would be a bold move, but I don't know. I mean, he might do it just to do it.
What would they even get back for him? To me, that's
Spite.
really the question.
Spite.
Well, yeah. I mean, certainly he can, take one parting shot at Cousins on his way out the door. But another team has to give up something to acquire a guy on the largest franchise tag in NFL history. What's that worth to a team? Are you going to give him a third-round pick? I don't think so. I mean, granted, it's what Alex Smith got, but many would say they'd rather give up a third-round pick and a big contract to Alex Smith than Kirk Cousins.
If the Steelers sign Bell, would they franchise anybody?
I wouldn't think so. I think at this point now, they're probably looking to release a few. That'll probably be the next move. I think they'll maybe not release, but certainly discuss a different contract situation. I think that conversation is going to be taking place with Mike Mitchell. They're not going to want him to play 2018 at his current contract. If he doesn't want to do that, I mean, he can refuse and get cut the same way that James Harrison did back in 2013. But Harrison got less money from the Bengals than he did from what the Steelers were offering to cut him down to. And I would imagine Mitchell will probably find that same level of resistance. It's not a great market for safeties. It just never will be, especially one that's been playing as long as Mitchell has.
Neil, always a pleasure. Great to hear from you. Neil Coulon, USA Today. We'll get to him again next week. Something about football, you can talk football all year round because you got the combine coming up, free agency coming up, then, of course, leading into the draft. I mean, and then it's OTAs. I feel like you can talk football all year round. They've done it. The NFL has done a great job of making sure there's a full cycle of it as you go through. So Lindsey Vonn won the bronze last night in the downhill. Ryan Shazier, by the way, let's keep it with football for a moment, says that he wants to play again and he wants to be an all-pro. And he made the statement yesterday. He says, he said in his first interview since the injury, he told teammate Roosevelt Nix that not only does he plan to play again, but he wants to get to Canton. He says the goals haven't changed. Shazier told Nix, quote, "I got to get back, bro." This is an appearance on Nix's podcast. "Every day, bro. Every day I'm like, right now I'm reading a book and it's basically saying, trust the process, bro. I'm trusting the process and I know the end goal. I'm taking it step by step of the way, every step of the way, but I'm giving it my football effort, like 1,000, everything I've got." Says the therapists think that, quote, "This man is crazy. I'm happy to be working with an athlete because I've never seen anybody work this hard. They've seen progression almost every day. They say some progression they see week to week. They see it in me from day to day. See, I've got to get it. I'm really trying to come back and still be a Pro Bowler, still be an All-Pro." He says, "I'm still reaching for the Hall of Fame. I feel like I'm the best linebacker ever. I've just got to get back out there so everybody can see it." General Manager Kevin Colbert said that he's there on a daily basis. Says he does some physical workouts in the morning. He either sits with the coaches or he sits with us. He's learning some of the personnel stuff just to keep him involved with us. And then he goes and does his rehab at the rehab facility. But the great thing about it is Ryan does as much as we do for him because the way he works at this and the attitude that he has shown and his rehabilitation, it's really uplifting. Never once has he said, "Why me?" And I know that is an uplifting gesture for us and those that deal with him because he shows us that everyone has problems, but he's going to work to overcome his as we should ours. That was from Kevin Colbert. So he's making progress. I mean, let's face it, everybody's rooting for him. Everybody is rooting for him. Also, the one of the Steelers' minority owners, the Rooneys only own about 30% of the team. I don't think a lot of people realize that sometimes. But it turned out that billionaire David Tepper is now trying to maybe leave the Steelers. He owns about 5% of them. And he's trying to buy the Carolina Panthers. Tepper, of course, the founder of the Appaloosa Management, which is an $11 billion hedge fund investment firm that he started in 1993. So he is trying to buy the Carolina Panthers, and he might try to bid as much as $2 billion to get them. So he is one of the ones that's in the running for that. All right, coming up next half hour, we'll talk about Penn State and Michigan. Big game in the Jordan Center coming up tonight for the Nittany Lions. They will play this evening at 7 o'clock. 6:30 will be the airtime. Senior night for Julian Moore and Shep Gardner at the Jordan Center. And a big game as Penn State goes for its 20th win of the season and its 10th win in the conference. Today's show brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors, Key Routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf on News Radio 1070 WKOK.